two, one, and just wait.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Voices of VIPs. My name is Cody LaPlante from IT, and we're joined today with Frankie Ann Marcille, who is, you'll hear a lot about her today in this hour of our live stream. But as a brief synopsis, she is an author, a creator, and a professional in our field. And also, the bonus of Voices of VIPs originally stands for Vision Impairments Professionals, but it can also stand for visually impaired person, which Frankie is as well. So it's really great to have Frankie here today. Hi, Frankie.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's so great to be here.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'm going to give just a really quick introduction, Frankie, of who you are, and then I'm going to kind of let you know, give you a chance to correct me if I got anything wrong. But Frankie received her bachelor's in theater arts at Western Connecticut State University. She's currently finishing up her master's degree in vision rehab and O&M at Hunter College. And then she's also the author of two children's books. One is Yes, it's a picture book that was released in 2021 and was published by Learning Rock LLC. And also, she's also the author of Through the Magnifying Glass, which was originally published by us, is out right now in our Working with Text curriculum, which we will talk about today as well, but also is also being published by Learning Rock LLC. Is that right, Frankie?
Yes, it is. It is. I actually just got the first print copy of it this week, so it's very exciting.
Yeah, super exciting. And so for those of you who are joining us live, we wanted to give you guys a couple of things. First of all, we really appreciate you coming to our live streams. It's so easy to watch the recorded video on YouTube, and that's totally fine as well. But if you are joining us live today, we want to give you a little incentive. In fact, in the months of November and December, this is the second of 3 live streams that we will have. The first was about 2 weeks ago. We did a Working with Text walkthrough. There's today, which is our Voices of VIPs live stream. And then also on the 14th of December, we will be having another live stream. And in those 3 live streams, we are going to be running a raffle. And that raffle is 2 print copies of Through the Magnifying Glass, which is a brand new book. We're talking about it today. And if you would like to enter yourself in for a chance to win that raffle, we have a form for you to fill out that we will be placing in the chat. Now, this is a great opportunity to introduce the third person on our call today, my amazing communication specialist, Mohammed. Mohammed is going to be, he's probably copying and pasting the link right now, so I won't have him say anything right now, but Mohammed will be monitoring the chat and also monitoring the live stream on the back end to make sure that we can sort out any technical difficulties if they should arise. But also he'll be monitoring the chat for any questions or comments that you guys have. So if you are joining live, there's a reason you are. It's so that you can join us live. Feel free to put any questions or comments in our comment section on YouTube here. Okay. Mohammed, we good with the link? You want to come on and say hi to everybody? He may be copying and pasting the link, which is okay.
Hi everyone. I'm working on pasting the link. But,
yeah, gotcha. I figured.
Everyone is doing well.
All right. Thanks, Mohammed. Appreciate it. And we'll be checking in with Mohammed just to see what you guys have as far as questions and concerns. So please put those in the chat. If you are just joining us, welcome to Voices of VIPs. We are here with Frankie Ann Marcille. She's the author of 2 different children's books. And the first one that I want to talk about, we're gonna talk about your children's book, Yes, Frankie, first. But I want to kind of lay out for everybody, why are we inviting you on here and what our relationship with you is. And with that, I want to tell you guys the story of how the book Through the Magnifying Glass came to be. Now, if you are involved in our social media at IT, you know that we've just released a new curriculum, or a new part of our screen reader curriculum called Working with Text. And that's a curriculum to teach JAWS, NVDA, and ChromeVox. And the skills primarily are reading, writing, and editing text. Now, when we were writing this curriculum, one of the things that we all know, if we're teaching technology in the field of visual impairments, if we are working on text-based skills, right? If you're working on How do you place your cursor? How do you move around in a document? How do you use your reading commands? How do you navigate to the ribbon? We always need a piece of text to work with. And as I was writing this, I was like, I don't want to do the classic thing of just let's pull up a random story and you know, there's no meaning behind that story except for it's just random text that we can work with. What I wanted to do instead, and this is why I reached out to Frankie, was develop a quality piece of children's literature that our students can work with. And not only can they use that piece of literature to learn how to use a screen reader, to learn how to place their cursor and read, but they can also get a ton of other skills that are really hard to grasp. And in today's episode of Voices of VIPs, I wanted to touch on that because Frankie, first of all, I won't give too much of the book away because I want Frankie, I want you to kind of give us a synopsis when we get there. But Frankie has done such a great job of capturing the blindness experience, at least the experience that I had when I was a kid growing up with low vision. And it really did bring to life all of the things that kind of I was experiencing as a child. And I hope that your students and also those of you out there with visual impairments or low vision have experienced as well. So that's kind of the story of why is Frankie here? What is Through the Magnifying Glass? How does it connect to our curriculum? And really to kind of piece that together, the curriculum that working with text curriculum comes with an e-copy, an electronic copy of Through the Magnifying Glass. So it's really exciting to kind of work with Frankie to put out this project. So what I wanted to focus on today is the broad topic that I wanted to discuss with you, Frankie, is representation of blind characters in literature, right? And I wanted to get your perspective because it's something that I guess for me as somebody in technology or as a TVI, I haven't really thought very much about until we started this project. But I know that you have because you've written 2 books with blind characters. And so that's kind of what I wanted to focus on and get your perspective about how you created your characters and what was going through your mind and stuff like that. But before we get into any of that, I want to know a little bit about you. So the first thing is, of course, what's your story? Where did you come from? And I wanted to learn a little bit about your visual impairment and your condition.
Yeah. So I grew up in Connecticut, and my visual impairment, let's start there. So my visual impairment is septo-optic dysplasia. I was born with it. I was diagnosed at 3 months old. And my vision, pretty much what they said when I was diagnosed was that my vision isn't really going to change, right? It doesn't really get better. It doesn't really get worse. There's not really a way to correct it. So my whole life growing up, I never wore glasses or anything. I just sort of adapted with what I had. I used magnifiers. I used large print books. I used Zoom text. So I used a lot of magnification. And just a little bit more about my vision impairment itself. So I am low vision. I have no peripheral vision. I have a visual acuity of 2400 in my left eye and 2600 on my right eye. So distance wise, I have a hard time seeing things that are further away. I have night blindness. I have a little bit of an nystagmus. So I've got a lot of things going on. But again, I consider this my normal. I've never known anything different. A few years ago, though, in 2020, my vision did start to change a little bit. I noticed, I've always, when you have a vision impairment your whole life, you learn what your baseline is, kind of what you can and can't see. And I was watching TV one day and my baseline, I could tell things print that I knew I could typically read from the distance I was sitting at was harder to read. Things were a little bit blurry. So my vision did change a little bit, but so I wear glasses now. I have these cute pink floral glasses that just sort of get me back to my baseline. But yeah, for the most part, it's pretty much been the same. I'm a large print reader and I do read Braille now. I use it mainly for things like the elevator panel, numbering systems in offices, And I have a white cane that I use part of the time. I use it mostly for unfamiliar environments, busy environments, crowds. It's got a cute pink grip that I love. And yeah, so that's just a little bit about my vision impairment. And growing up with a vision impairment is sort of what inspired me to go on professionally to work as a vision rehab teacher and orientation mobility specialist, and also to write books that feature characters who are blind or visually impaired.
Absolutely, yeah. And for those of you who know a little bit about me, you know that I also have low vision. And really where I met Frankie was in Connecticut at BESB. For those of you at BESB, shout out to you all, which is the
Yes.
Board of Education and Services for the Blind in Connecticut. And Robin Clark, actually, shout out to Robin Clark at Utah School for the Blind right now. She was running a program or a number of programs that, you know, when you're in a state and you start to know all of the teenagers with visual impairments, that's how Frankie and I met, is through those BESB programs. So
I think I like to say, Cody, you're the first other low vision person
Yeah.
I ever met.
yeah, same, actually, same. Absolutely. Yeah. So isn't it funny how the vision field is just so small and we all know each other? So funny.
Yeah.
The second question I wanted to know about, and this is something I'm sure we've talked about before, but what was it like growing up and being in school, and what were some experiences that kind of stick out in your mind in the classroom and out of the classroom that kind of, when you started to feel or if you started to feel different from your peers, what was that kind of like?
Yeah. So I always felt like I didn't really think about my vision impairment too much until I hit high school. So I went to a Catholic school from kindergarten to senior year of high school. And there were pros and cons to that. So some of the pros were that my classes were very small. I was in school with the same 12 kids, right? From 12, like core group of 12 kids from kindergarten to 8th grade. So they met me when I was 5, and then just sort of my friends, my classmates all knew about my vision
Right.
impairment, and they just, like, there was never really any question about it. My TVI would come in and he was wonderful. His name was Dan Nagengas, and I had him for kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade. And he would come in and he would try to engage my classmates with some of my sessions. So like when I was doing Zoom text or things like that, he would bring in accessible computer games that I could play and have my friends come play them with me.
Oh, cool.
And he was really great about getting my peers involved. So honestly, I never really thought much about it. I feel like I was very fortunate and I had a really positive elementary school experience. I used large print books, which was a little inconvenient, you know, having to carry the different volumes of books around. But I didn't really think much of it because nobody ever, I don't know, no one ever really drew attention to it in a way that felt like I was different or negative. I've always felt very included. But then as I grew older and, you know, you start to become a little more self-conscious, people change.
Absolutely.
I changed schools in 8th grade. I moved to high school. And the high school was a little bit bigger. Comparatively to my elementary and middle school. I had a lot of the same friends, but it still was a very different experience. And that really felt like the first time that I had to explain my vision impairment to people, and not just my
Right.
classmates, but my teachers as well. And this was one of the first time that I really encountered some pushback from teachers where they were like, well, I don't understand. You have
Right.
vision, you can see me, you wear glasses. So what does this mean? And then so that was a little bit difficult, but I had a really great TVI at the time. Her name was Wanda, and she kind of came in and was like, listen, I know this is a really big change. I know this is really difficult, but we got this. And she really pushed me she set it up so that I had a meeting with my teachers at the beginning of every school year. I ran that meeting. I would lay out my accommodations and say, this is what I need. How can we make this happen? Right. And I feel like she really sort of like put that advocacy in me right from the get-go to be like, all right, you got this. Like, this is your thing. This is your experience. You're going to run the show. And same thing with Robin Clark, on the VRT side, and sort of, I had a really great support system on the academic side and a really great support system on the expanded core side. And it was just, I felt like very, very fortunate, but even so, there's still those moments that can be really challenging. Like I tell this story a lot because I think this perfectly sums up those moments of uncomfortability and self-doubt and anxiety that came up as a young adult, a high schooler with a vision impairment. I never had a cane. I was never told I needed a cane. The first time that I was recommended for O&M was when I was 16. So being legally blind and unable to drive, I had always accepted that. I never really felt any grief about it. It was just a fact of my life that I knew that I was not going to be able to drive a car. And I was cool with that. But then at 16, when all of my friends started getting their driver's licenses and I was handed my first white cane and told, you're going to take classes on how to cross the street, I felt really self-conscious and uncomfortable. And it really brought up some of those feelings of self-doubt. And, I really didn't want to use the cane. I was probably every O&M specialist's worst nightmare because I would do it and then put it in my bag and never look at it again.
Right.
But it takes time to process that, and to accept that. And that's something that I really tried to capture and bring out in Through the Magnifying Glass, because that is, I think, an experience that is not just unique to myself. Cody, I don't know
Absolutely.
what your thoughts about
No,
that are.
absolutely. But... Yeah. And it's funny because, and that's a great segue as we kind of start to talk into your books, is that the first time that I finished the draft of, or I finished reading the draft of Through the Magnifying Glass, it was like, even just the first chapter, I was like, how in the world, like and of course I knew that you had such similar experiences to what I did in middle school and high school, but it was like reading about myself. Like, it was so crazy. And I think that's why today I'm like, I want to talk about representation, because I didn't feel like I was underrepresented as a person with low vision until I read your book. And I was like, wow, that is my experience. Do you know what I mean? That is my experience. And all of a sudden I'm like, where I can't believe that I've never read a book about somebody that has low vision, because it just, especially as just like you captured, it's kind of, you can have all of these support systems, as I had as well. But even if you do, it's kind of like you're the only one that you know of, right? And so it can be really isolating sometimes, and you don't realize it until after the fact, like, because it's exactly what you said. Like, I when I think about my childhood and I think about my school experience, my elementary, high school experience, I don't always think about it being like necessarily negative or having these things that felt hard. But then when I really think about it and I hear my students talk about it now, I'm like, wait a minute. Yes. Maybe I did experience that. Maybe that is what happened to me. And I just didn't realize it. So, and I really tried in the book, I know we'll get into this a little bit more, to think beyond. I really wrote it using my own experience as the main reference, but then I tried to think about what are things that I know my students have shared with me or my peers have shared with me, and how can I really capture the big picture low vision experience. So it was really, I'm glad to hear that it resonated with you, Cody. Oh, for sure.
Felt good to hear that.
For sure. So I guess with that, I want to throw it out to our audience here. And I want to kind of use this platform as kind of a way to generate ideas, even if you are a professional in the field and you're looking for books with blind main characters, or even blind characters. They don't even have to be the main character. But Frankie, I guess I'll throw it to you. And then if you are in the audience and you're like, oh, I know of a book that has a blind character in it, put it in the chat and we'll have Muhammad read them out to us as you kind of put them in there. But Frankie, just from your perspective as a author and also as a reader, what books do you know of that have characters with low vision?
Yeah, so there's two that come to mind. The first one, because this one really stuck out to me, because I read this book when I was in college, and I remember reading it and being like, oh my gosh, there's a low vision blind character in this. That's awesome. So the first book that comes to mind is The Fault in Our Stars by John Green.
Yeah.
It features a secondary character who starts out with low vision. The character's name is Isaac. He starts out with low vision, and then he progressively loses more of his vision throughout the book. And it's a really it's a great book. I really enjoyed it. And I really love Isaac's role in it. I think it's represented very well. Another book is, this is a children's book. It's a part of a series, a 2-book series that I believe there are more coming out, but it's the book Alex and the Magical Coat, Standing Up for Others. And it's written by Julia Reed. And it's a really great book that sort of explores how we address differences amongst our peers, how we can stand up for others who might be being bullied. There's really great themes in the book. I know Julia, she's a really wonderful friend, educator, and author. So that's another one. I also have, this isn't necessarily on books, but just thinking about representation.
Absolutely.
I have a TV show that I think I recommend this to, I bring it up a lot now because it didn't really, this was one of my first growing up representation characters. So the television show Avatar: The Last Airbender. There's the character Toph, and she's a secondary character, but she is one of the main characters of the show. And there's some really great scenes with her where she is sort of coping with and coming to terms with her blindness and having difficult conversations with her parents about what they are nervous about her doing as a blind young lady and what she wants to do. And so I think it's really great for capturing some of those tough moments. It does it in a really really real, honest, but respectful way. And I remember that resonating with me so much as a kid. And now I bring it up all the time when I'm talking to parents or students. So those are 3 of mine. I don't know, has anyone shared any in the chat?
Yeah, Mohammed. Yeah, go for it.
So Jackie Otwell has shared The Seeing Summer as a possible book. And that's the only book we have right now in the comments, The Seeing Summer.
The Seeing Summer. Okay, cool. We'll have to look that up. Also, hi, Jackie. Jackie works with, or in my area, works with me at my day job. So hi, Jackie. Nice to see you in our live stream. But yeah, if you guys are joining live and you do have other recommendations, let us know, and we can definitely point those out here. And Frankie, I think you mentioned on something that I want to touch on is that you said that the way that the character is represented is something that really resonated with you. And that, I think that's a really important point, is that not just is there a blind character, but like, how are they represented? And is that true to a blind person's experience, right?
Yeah, I think that's a huge part of it. Because I think, without meaning to, sometimes I feel like when characters are written, people fall into writing things very stereotypically, which happens, right? If it's not your lived experience, how do you know how to write it other than what you've seen or heard, right?
Absolutely.
And so I think that's why a lot of the time when characters with disabilities are presented, not necessarily just vision, but are presented in media, it kind of looks one way, right? And
Absolutely.
I feel like that is why a lot of the time, based on our lived experience, Cody, people have a hard time wrapping their head around the concept of low vision or visually impaired
Yes.
and like what that looks like. And it's like, oh, you must use a cane all the time, or you must
Right.
wear dark sunglasses all the time, and you must read Braille and all of these things. And it's like, well, I do read Braille and I do have a cane, but I don't
But I don't
have to
look
do
like
those.
that.
Right. And
Yeah,
I don't have to do
exactly.
those things all the time in order to still be blind, right? Or still be a part of
Absolutely.
this community.
Absolutely.
And so I think sometimes when characters are presented in one way all the time, it can lead to some of this misunderstanding about the spectrum of blindness and vision impairment. And so that's something that, you know, as diversity and inclusion are becoming bigger conversations in the entertainment industry, in media, I think it's really important to sort of capitalize on that and use it as an opportunity to educate people and say, well, hey, this is also what a blind person can look like, right? This is also what a deaf
Yes.
person can look like, right? So I think
Yes.
that's something that I think is really important, and something that I've been really trying to think about in my work, not just as an author, but as a teacher, as a professional in the field, you know, really being mindful about that and thinking about how I can be as true to that idea and message as possible. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Love it. Okay, cool. Awesome. So then kind of getting into your first book. Yes.
Yeah.
The Story of a Dreamer. So what was the story of how did that come to be? What made you want to write a book, and why a children's book, and why that particular topic?
Yeah. So I have always really loved writing. It has always been something I've done. I wrote my first children's book actually when I was 5, and I entered it
Oh,
in
wow.
my elementary school had this like young authors contest that it did every year. And this is actually a really fun story that I like to tell, because the illustrator of the book, Patrick Regan, who is a phenomenal illustrator, graphic designer, animator, and he's been my friend since we were 2 years old. So we went to kindergarten together, and when I wrote my first book then, and he also submitted for this contest a picture book, and we both won for our grade for writing and illustrating. And so it felt kind of like a full circle moment coming together and working on this book together. But anyway, so I've always loved to write, and I've always just written for fun. And yes, actually started as sometimes like when I have ideas or thoughts for a book or a short story or whatever it is, I sort of get my thoughts and feelings out through writing. So I wrote it as just this like long form poem on my iPhone in my notes app that I intended to do nothing with. And then I was just thinking about my experiences as a person with a vision impairment, and I was thinking about my first TVI specifically, Dan Nagengast, who he passed away when I was in 3rd grade, but he was always really, when I think about my life and the way that I was able to advocate for myself and have such vast experiences, I really think about him and my parents and how they just really encouraged me from day one to always say yes. Like when I wanted to play t-ball, and my parents were a little apprehensive about that, but they didn't say no. They said, okay, let's see what happens, right? And I wanted to take dance class, and they didn't say no. They said, okay, let's see what happens. Like, yes, let's try it. Let's give her the chance to try.
Yeah.
And I really think that has led to me having a lot of the experience that I have now. Like, I don't think I would necessarily say yes to something like Cody flying to Alaska at age 17
Right.
to work
Absolutely.
for a capabilities program. Like, I don't think I would have done those things if my parents and this TVI, Dan Nagengast, didn't put that in me from such a young age. And so I was thinking about that, and I wrote this little note in my phone, and then I let one person read it, and they were like, you should do something with this. You should turn this into a children's book. But I didn't do anything with it for like 5 years. And then I let someone else read it, and they said the same thing. And so I finally formatted it into a book. And then it was the pandemic that really pushed me, because everything was shut down. I was staying with my parents back in Connecticut. and I wasn't really doing anything. I had applied to graduate school and was waiting to hear if I got in. And I was like, you know what? I have all this time. Maybe I should see if I can do something with this. So I started researching publishers. I started thinking about who I knew who could illustrate it. And that's sort of how it all came together. And it was a pandemic project that it all came together throughout the pandemic. I didn't meet my publisher in person until the book was already done. Pat and I didn't see each other in person until the book was finished, until we gave our first author talk. We did a presentation at our elementary school that we went to. And that was the first time we saw each other in person after working on the book. So it was all done
Wow.
through FaceTimes, emails, phone calls. We put it together.
It's like
so
the story of COVID, right? Like,
yeah. And then that's kind of how Through the Magnifying Glass came together
kinda,
too.
yeah, absolutely.
Um,
Right. And now it's like, we just live in this remote world and that's how we work now, right?
Yeah,
We don't necessarily have
exactly.
to be face-to-face collaborators. So one of the things that I loved about the book, and especially about Yes, that is really interesting, is I love children's books because you are doing so much in such a short amount of time. And I know that not only, were you writing the words on the page, but also directing Pat to draw the images, and Pat was relying on you to see how was this character who has a visual impairment, this young girl, how was she going to be represented? And I know we've had a lot of conversations about how did you make those decisions? Like in the book, she's not carrying a cane. There's no mention of Braille. What were those decisions like, and how did you come to the decisions that you made?
Yeah. So since the book is really based on it's a combination of experiences, right? I wrote it based on to really try to represent the full spectrum of blindness and hopefully resonate with anyone who, not just people who are blind or visually impaired, but really
Right.
anyone who's ever been told no or felt like they couldn't do something.
Right.
But I was really thinking about when I wrote it, I was referencing my own experience. So when I was thinking about that, I was like, I feel like this young girl, I want her to just be a representation of that. So we actually used a picture of me when I was 2. And so I sent that to Pat, and he used that as sort of a reference for the little girl. And she wears a little ballet outfit in the book because one of her dreams, one of the things she wants to do is be a dancer. And people told her, no, you can't do that because you can't see.
Right.
And then she grows up and does it. And so that,
I love it.
So since I didn't read Braille growing up, I didn't have a cane growing up. I chose to really stick to those lived experiences, but then I was thinking about it, and in order to truly encompass the whole spectrum, there is in the book, the little girl grows up and she becomes a teacher, and then there's a scene at the very end of the book where she's sitting with another student who is feeling really down and upset because people are telling her no, and that student has a cane. We put a cane in the picture for her because I was like, I really want everyone to feel represented. So yeah.
And what a hard balance to strike when you're trying to do so much in such a small amount of space, right? Only a couple of pages, really. And how do we represent the lived experiences of people like us who don't use a cane and don't read Braille as our primary reading medium, but also knowing that like our students do have canes and do read Braille, and like, how do we make it not a stereotype, but also really capture everybody's experiences? And that's such a hard thing to do.
It is, especially when the spectrum is so vast,
Absolutely.
like when there's so much to represent. There's so many, you could have 5 people who identify as blind, low vision, or visually impaired, right? And 5 people in a room, and all of them experience it differently, experience the world differently, access the world differently. But we all belong to the same community. We all have shared experiences within our own individual experience, and it's still a community, right? So
Mhm.
it is a balancing act for sure. And there are times where I have found myself leaning too far into my own lived experience and then taking a step back and thinking, okay, that's what I experienced, but what about somebody
Right.
else? What about
Right.
someone else who might need this book or need this reassurance of, yes, I can, or and so that's something that I really tried to do when writing both books, is really think about my experience and take a step back and think about how could this translate to someone else, right? And
I love
how
it.
could, yeah. So and it was really great to be able to share it with other people in the community. And what I really loved about writing Through the Magnifying Glass, which we'll get into more, but when I wrote Yes, I was really doing it myself, and really I didn't really have the opportunity to speak to other people within the community while I was doing it. But writing Through the Magnifying Glass, it was so great to be able to share it with you, Cody, and get your
Yeah.
feedback and your
Yeah.
perspectives. And I felt like that really allowed for more perspective to be put into it. And hopefully we can connect with more people and have it resonate with them as well.
I love it. Okay. All right. Awesome. I love it. Um, and so before we'll kind of transition over to Through the Magnifying Glass. But before we do, I just want to remind people that Through the Magnifying Glass, is Frankie's new book. It was released by us on November 1st. And then Frankie, you're going to tell us a little bit about the publishing on the print version. But if you would like a print copy of that book, Through the Magnifying Glass, fill out the form. It's linked in the chat. The Muhammad has put that in the chat. So please fill out that form. Even if you came to our previous live stream, if you fill out that form again, you'll be entered again to win one of those 2 copies of the book. So just a reminder to do that. And then Frankie, yeah, let's transition over to Through the Magnifying Glass. And for those of you who don't know, this is a 10 chapter children's book. So we did the analysis, and it's about a 5th grade reading level. And it's about, and I'll turn it over to you, Frankie. Could you give us a little bit of a brief synopsis about what the book is about?
Yeah, so Through the Magnifying Glass follows the main character, Julia. She is a middle school student who is low vision, and she is just at that age where she is learning to accept her vision impairment. She has all of this technology that her TVI and O&M instructor have provided her with, but she's just not at the point where she feels comfortable fully accepting it. And so it's the story of her brother, and his group of friends who live in Cooperstown, New York. And they, in addition to her being visually impaired, she's just like any other student, right? And she happens to love mystery stories. She loves Sherlock Holmes. She loves Agatha Christie, and her whole family does. Her whole family is a family of mystery lovers. And so when Cooperstown, New York has a big mystery on its hands, someone has broken into the Baseball Hall of Fame Museum and stolen a rare artifact. It's up to Jonathan, her brother, and his group of friends to solve the mystery. And Julia wants nothing more than to be included and be a part of that process, but she's nervous that her vision impairment will hold her back. And so throughout the book, she's learning to use the technology and tools she has and balance that with her own adaptive strategies to help her brother and his friends solve this mystery.
Nice. I love it. And one of the things that I wanted to get your perspective on, again, because I know we've talked about it, but really it's intriguing to me. And now that the project is over, now I can kind of sit back and relax and ask you these questions. Because at the time I was like, sounds good, let's do it.
Yeah.
But I came to you with, knowing that you wrote Yes, and knowing that you're such a good writer and you've already gone through the process. I was like, hey, I want to make a children's book for this curriculum. What do you think? And you're like, yeah, let's do it. And I kind of was like, whatever you want to write about works for me. And you came up with this amazing plot line with a mystery, and it was like just a really complex storyline. What made you go in that direction of a mystery novel? What made you go in the direction of her being in the, like, what were your thoughts as you started to develop the broad strokes of this plot?
Yeah. Well, so first I was thinking about what you shared with me about the curriculum itself, right? And what you were
Sure.
hoping to accomplish with the curriculum. And then I was thinking about how I had already written a book that was targeted more for young readers, right? It was targeted, it has a message that can resonate with anyone, but reading level, it really is more like first, second, third grade.
Right.
And so, or something that could be read out loud to like a kindergarten class. So it was really
Right.
geared to the lower elementary school grade levels. And so I was thinking about what we talked about, and I was thinking about my process, and I was like, well, I've done that. I feel like it makes sense to make this the next step, right? A step higher. And then I was thinking about what was I reading at that age and what were my friends reading at that age. And I remember being in elementary school and having to write a book report on a Nancy Drew book. And I was like, huh, that kind of feels. And then I was thinking about the elements that go into a mystery. And I was thinking about all of these things that we said we wanted to capture. We wanted to capture the experience of being blind or visually impaired at that age. We wanted to capture all of the things that someone might encompass. And I was like, how can we do that? How can we show a character struggling to accept their vision impairment, but hit all of these points? And I felt like a mystery just sort of naturally brings up a lot of these circumstances, right? There's a lot of problem solving. There's a lot of interacting with various types of people. There's just so many elements to a mystery itself and to solving a mystery. And I just thought about the classic Sherlock Holmes with a magnifying glass, and it made me think about magnifiers and all of the tools that we as people who are blind or visually impaired have to use and our students use. And I was like, that's one right there. And that is a sighted person using that. So how, and it just sort of got my brain going and thinking. And I was like, I feel like a mystery could be a really natural way to include a lot of these points that we wanted to hit and bring up scenarios for our main character where she's forced to sort of think and make a choice about, do I use my tech? Do I not use my tech? Do I use my cane? Do I not use my cane? What do I do? And that's sort of how that came about. And also I've always loved, just for my own self, I've always loved mysteries.
Sure.
I know that, mystery stories can be, they're timeless, like I think about, we have Nancy Drew, we have Sherlock Holmes, we have Scooby-Doo, right? Like there's all these various ways that mysteries are done. And I feel like it's something that can be really exciting, really intriguing, and also hopefully really motivating for our students that, it's all about problem solving. And I feel like that can be a really challenging thing as a person with any disability to think about, whenever there's a problem, that's when I feel like we get a lot of pushback. Well, what are you going to do in this situation? Right. How are you going to figure it out? And or even
any teenager, really, right? Like,
right. Yeah. It's a big part of the universal teenage experience. So that was something that I was hoping to sort of capture in this. And I really tried with the characters to bring in a lot of different personalities of teenager. I have 3 siblings who are all teenagers who I based 3 of the secondary characters on. Because again, I really want, whenever I write anything, I'm really trying to think about the universal accessibility of it all and how this story can reach anyone. I write it with my community in mind and my students in mind, but I really want it to be able to resonate with anyone. So that was a big part of the process for me and how I sort of landed on that mystery genre.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, it was fun getting that open-ended, right? It can be whatever you want.
Whatever you want. Whatever you want. I was too busy writing the curriculum. I was like, whatever you think is going to be great, I'm sure. So yes.
Just a quick update for you.
Go for it.
The form for our raffle is not accepting new responses right now.
Gotcha. I will open that and actually I'll open that right now as I ask Frankie the next question. But Frankie, the question that I kind of had on my mind is, what scene in the book, without giving any crazy spoilers, what scene in the book was your favorite to write, or one of the scenes that kind of sticks out to you in your mind as like, wow, that is like the blind experience right there.
Yeah. Well, I have two that when I just think about it, it's hard to not like tear up in certain moments because it really just hits everything. So there, like you said in the first chapter, Cody, this is one that I think you said resonated with you. There's a scene where our main character, Julia, is walking down the hallway in her high school. And she is just looking at, to her, it just looks like a blur of people moving back and forth. And it's so much for her to visually process. But because of her vision impairment, she has learned a strategy for herself to sort of hyper fixate on details of people and like things like her brother. He has brown hair. He always typically wears a white t-shirt and jeans. He has a brown jacket he usually wears. She knows about how tall he is. So she took it upon herself to sort of adapt in this way so that when she's walking down a hallway, she can quickly identify someone, even if it's out of her visual field. It's these little things about people that just stick out. So she can start to give herself cues. Oh, this person's outline and the blur of the colors kind of looks like my brother. And then the two of them have an auditory signal to each other. He whistles a tune from a favorite show of the two of theirs. And so there's these little things, these little intricacies, these little shared moments that she has with her brother or her friends that are unique to them, but they allow her to find him and to, it's fun, right? It's a fun thing for them. So, and that is based off of real things in my life. Like I have things like that with people that are important in my life where they might whistle a certain tune to help me find them in a crowd or something like that. So that was one that really stood out to me and felt very personal and
that was like,
share.
That was the first scene I read and I was like, oh, this is perfect. Right. But yeah, go ahead. Glad. What was your second one?
And my second one was there's a moment, I'm not going to give too much away, but there's a moment when they're trying to solve one part of the mystery. And there is an unsafe situation where it involves Julia having to navigate around broken glass. And she's standing in a corner of her room and there's broken glass. And she is asking herself the question, do I risk it? Do I get my cane out? What do I do? And that is one of the first moments in the book where she starts to really think about using her cane more, and she gets it out and she uses it. And so that felt like a very true moment to my own life that I've experienced, having my cane in my bag, not wanting to take it out, not wanting people to see it and associate it with my vision impairment, but then choosing to do so and seeing how liberating it was, and that I could, without having to ask for help, navigate a situation that I otherwise couldn't have on my own. So that was one. And I know I've had so many conversations with students of mine who are low vision, who get their cane and don't want to use it. And then they do. And it's this moment of, oh my gosh, I get it. I get how this can help me. So that was one too, that felt really great to write. It was really fun. It was a challenge, but it was fun to write some of these scenes where I'm trying to describe Julia's vision and what she's seeing and how she perceives the world and make it relatable, but also able to be grasped by someone who maybe doesn't have that experience of being blind or visually impaired, because it's always can be difficult sometimes to explain it to someone who doesn't have that lived experience. So I was trying to capture that, and it was really fun, and I hope that it resonates.
You did do a great job too, by just explaining just the, in the transitions when Julia's walking out of a building and she's blinded by the sunlight and she's using her brother's arms. Like it's really great to just read a narrative as somebody who has experienced that before, but how also has to explain that to other people, and to be able to say like, oh, read this book and you might understand a little bit more of how visual impairments work. And it's so great to have that in a piece of literature. And then, I mean, for me, and this is so in my experience, but one of my favorite scenes was towards the end of the book. I'm trying not to give up spoilers away, which I'm very bad at, so I'm going to try to say very little. But towards the end of the book, But towards the end of the book, when she has to use a computer, and it was one of those scenes where you and I kind of collaborated, and from my perspective, I'm like, oh yeah, let's put these NVDA key commands into the actual narrative of the book. But then you came in and wrote it in such a better way than I put it in. But so that really, when you have a student who's, I mean, when they're using our curriculum and just learning to read use a screen reader, and then all of a sudden, oh my gosh, the key commands that I use are in this book. How cool is that? Like, for me, I just thought it was such a cool ability for us to be able to do that, and to create something that's so unique and strange, to have like NVDA key commands in a book. I just thought it was so cool.
Yeah, no, I loved that too. And I honestly was thinking, like, I wish that it's really great to be in this position now as adults and professionals, because the question I ask myself all the time is, what did I need when I was younger, right?
Yes.
Or what do I wish I could have had when I was younger? And I wish I was such an avid reader. I loved reading. I read everything under the sun. And I wish that I had a book that had a character that was struggling to make the decision to use her cane, or was learning to use a screen reading software, because at the age this character is in the book, I was learning to use Zoom text. I was learning, more of the intricacies of Zoom text, and I didn't always want to do it, and it was a lot to digest. And I think my hope is that this book can help students to maybe feel a little less alone, and like their experience is not feel so isolated. And hopefully, knowing that it was written by people, like by a person, and created by two people who have that same experience. Like, this doesn't just come from us, talking to people. We were right there with you. Like, we know exactly what it feels like still today. Like, every day.
I have a quick pamphlet that we've ordered way too many of them, but this is the cover of the book. If you can see the screen, it's called Through the Magnifying Glass. And then also I want to give Frankie, I want to give you a chance to tell people where people can order. What is the pre-orders like? I'm sorry, before you do that, I did fix the form if you guys are looking for the raffle. So if you do want to get it, enter for a chance to win one, enter or submit one of the forms below in the chat. Muhammad has put that link in, and it is now accepting responses. So please do that. But let's say they've gone through. Yes, Muhammad, go for it.
I'm sorry. We have one new comment that I thought it would be good to mention. This is also from Jackie, who says, I have to help out. I hope Shannon reached out to you about coming to the Braille Challenge. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences. It helps me so much as a TVI. It's incredibly powerful.
Awesome.
Oh, thank you. That's so good to hear.
Frankie and I have been collaborating with Jackie, who runs that Maryland Braille Challenge. So Frankie, hopefully we can get you over down here to Maryland, to Baltimore, to share this book with the people at the Braille Challenge, if you happen to be in Maryland. So
yeah, that's the goal. And I'm planning to do that here in NYC as well for the New York City. I'm based in New York City now, and my plan is to attend the New York City Braille Challenge as well, and to just continue to share this book with anyone who wants to read it. So
I love it. So tell us how, let's say they've gone through the raffle and they are not one of the lucky two that have won one of our copies. How do they get their hands on either Yes or Through the Magnifying Glass? How can we find that?
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways. So pre-orders just ended for print copies of Through the Magnifying Glass, but I just updated my website, so you can now order Through the Magnifying Glass through my website, which is just my name, frankieannmarcille.com. And then right now, Yes is available online through Amazon, Barnes and Noble, bookshop.com, Target, Walmart, pretty much anywhere that you can buy books online. Yes is available for purchase, and Through the Magnifying Glass will be available the same way starting December 7th. So 1 week from today, which is very exciting.
Nice.
Yeah. So, but in the meantime, if you'd like to wait and order it through Amazon or online through your favorite book retailer on the 7th, you can do that. But in the meantime, you can just head on over to my website and place an order in, and I will get them to you. So yeah, so there's a lot
Awesome.
of different ways. And yes, actually, Cody brought this to my attention and we got it fixed. So Yes is available on Bookshare. And we are in the process of getting Through the Magnifying Glass to be available on Bookshare as well.
Nice.
Just as
Awesome.
a point of reference. Yeah.
Good to know. Good to know. And then I know we've talked about this before. You get a bigger percentage if they order off your website, correct?
Yeah.
So order off the website.
Yeah, order off the website. I get more of the money that way. But I also understand, Amazon is really convenient. I also am pro Amazon because I currently work for Visions Services for the Blind here in New York City, and Amazon has been a huge supporter of employing a lot of our clients who are blind or visually impaired seeking employment. So Amazon has been a huge supporter of people in our community getting jobs, and I love that. So also, if you buy on Amazon, it helps to raise awareness of the book. When Yes released on Amazon, we were in the top 40 of books on disability on Amazon. So buying on Amazon, yeah. So it can be a really great way to get exposure and to get on bestseller lists and raise more awareness for not just, if that can happen for Through the Magnifying Glass on December 7th, that would be a really great way to not just raise awareness about the book, but about the curriculum as well, because I have a whole thing about the curriculum in the description for the book. So yes, absolutely. Please. So either way, it's very helpful. And I hope, whether you buy it through my website or Amazon, I hope when you get it that you enjoy it and you get something out of it and your students get something out of it. So thank you all so much.
All right. Awesome. Sweet. And so for those of you joining live, just last little plug, if you do want a print copy of Through the Magnifying Glass, we're giving away 2 in our 3 live streams. The one already happened. This is the second. And then also the last thing I want to plug. So fill out that form. And then the last thing I want to plug is our next live stream is eye.t Live. And we're going to be doing a holiday special where we're going to be talking about some cool lesson ideas that you can do if you're doing screen reader instruction with a student for the holidays. We're going to be talking about how to create a holiday shopping list. We're going to be doing a navigation sequence on Amazon so that they can purchase presents or gifts for family members or friends. So stick around on our YouTube channel. If you want to get that, subscribe and hit the bell so you know when we're going live. And then also, join us on Facebook. We have a Facebook group, AT for VI Professionals, or you can always email us as well, info@itvision.com. And then Frankie, why don't you share your social media, or how can people get in contact with you if they have more questions?
Yeah, I would say the best way to get in contact is through my website. So my website is frankieannmarcille.com, and it has links to all of my social media pages. It has tabs that say everything that I'm doing. There's a contact tab. So if you want to get in touch with me directly, it'll send me a message. So that's the best way to get all of my social media and all of my stuff. So yeah, frankieannmarcille.com. Please reach out. I love getting to meet people and collaborate with people, and I would really love to hear from you. So thank you so much.
And finally, of course, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate you sharing your experience and sharing this book really with the world. It became so much. I mean, it started out as, it's going to be a side to the curriculum, but it really did develop into its own kind of, product that's just such a great thing in and of itself outside of the curriculum. So we were just so excited at IT that we could collaborate with you and kind of bring it to fruition. So thank you so much for being here.
Yeah. And thank you, truly, thank you so much for asking me to be a part of this project. It's been one of the most meaningful projects I've ever worked on in total, the curriculum, knowing that my book can be a part of this curriculum that is helping to educate young people in our community on screen readers. It means so much. And the book never would have happened if you didn't ask me to do it. So I owe all of this to IT, and I'm just so happy to have been a part of it. And thank you for having me. And I can't wait to
Absolutely.
continue to work together on this.
Absolutely. Well, the asking was the easy part. You wrote the whole book. So all right. Well, thank you guys so much. Those of you joining live, thanks for joining us on Voices for VIPs, Voices of VIPs. Join us again. IT Live is December 14th at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're doing our holiday episode. So subscribe and hit the bell if you want to be notified of when we're going live. And other than that, feel free to continue to leave comments down below. And then also fill out the form if you want to be included in our raffle. But we'll see you on the 14th. And thanks for coming. See you next time.
Thank you.